Hi there everybody, I'm Jason Little and you're watching 7 ways to flip your thinking away from urgency for change and towards cause and purpose. Welcome back to LCM TV, and before I get started, I did film this yesterday, the end of November, so it's the last day of Movember, so you won't see me rocking this Hulk Hogan mustache until next year when Movember pops up again. So first, thank you to everyone who participated in the campaign. So that was people who bought self-study courses and books, contributed to the campaign directly, or shared it on social media. We are up to, as of filming this, $3,500 or so for the month. So thank you very much. And that now brings our grand total to close to 14,000 of donations over the last year and a bit. So every month we donate a portion of our revenue, and we have special contests and things like that to raise funds for a variety of human rights charities around the world, and also mental health charities and any charities that create a strong social impact. So obviously last month was Movember, so all of those proceeds are going to support men's mental health. And because we're heading into the holiday season, for starters, our theme for the month is cause and purpose. So we will be donating this month's proceeds, yes, because I'm airing this on December 1st, this month's proceeds to Second Harvest, which is a food recovery service here in Toronto. We donated to them last year, so we're going to be putting all of our contributions towards that cause as well. You can find links in the description below with all the charities that we've donated to since we started doing this, and also where you can find out more information about how to participate. All right, so first, let's get into why cause and purpose over urgency for change. So for starters, when we talk about urgency, that tends to cause stress and anxiety. So we're taught as change agents that we have to create urgency. We have to instill urgency in others. And there's a couple of problems with that. One, it can borderline on coercion and stress. And two, when you look at one of the more common metaphors for urgency for change, it's to create a burning platform. And I don't think people who use it know where it came from. And it literally is a burning platform in the ocean, and jump or die. Well, I guess jump and risk dying or possibly surviving, or stay on a burning oil rig and burn to death. Now, I'm sure if you're bringing Agile into your organization, that's not a life-threatening thing, so please stop using that metaphor. It's just the worst thing that I've seen come out of the change community. So the more important thing is when we look at that lens and we look at having to create urgency, that drives our behaviors. It puts us in a natural push mode, and it puts us in a place of, only considering the perspective of the organization when it comes to whatever that change is. So let's get into the 7 ideas that can help flip your thinking away from that, give you a different lens to look through, which is called cause and purpose. So first, cause and purpose. Why such a confusing statement? Well, I worked in one organization, well, I should say I did a training course in one organization where the people in the course didn't really believe in their company's purpose. They said, we actually make the world a worse place because we're in hedge funds and all we do is create more disparity in wealth in the country that we serve. And for them, whatever the organization wanted to do and change wasn't really something that they could really rally around. But they did have a very positive culture within their IT division. They loved working together, they loved the technology that they were working on, and they did a bunch of counterbalances because they didn't necessarily believe in the company's purpose. They did things like charity hackathons, or, everyone got X number of days off paid to be able to work for charities or contribute to the community or contribute to society somehow. So they had all that really positive stuff kind of down at the team and department level, but it was misaligned with what they believed their company purpose was, which was not very honorable in their opinion. So I'm not going to get into the argument about, well, why would you work for that organization? Because I think lots of people are in organizations where they don't necessarily believe in the purpose of their organization, but they just love the working environment, and there's nothing wrong with that. So when we talk about cause, it's what can we do to rally people around a common cause? That could be an objective, that could be something with meaning, versus just a strong sense of purpose. But either way, looking through those lenses is more important than looking at the urgency lens. So let's get into those 7 ideas. The first one is really a trio of ideas, and it's a matter of perspective. The first one I'll talk about is the organization's perspective. So this is typically where urgency comes into play. We factor in, why is it important for the organization to do this? That might be revenue targets, that might be unhappy shareholders, that might be unhappy board members, that might be, the idea of a lot of enterprise transformations is the notion of faster, better, cheaper, masked with purpose and intent behind it. But that's one perspective. It's valid, but it's not the only one. So we do need to consider why this is important to the organization. And when I get into one of the other elements and one of the other 7 ideas, we'll talk a little bit more about creating that right intent. So we do need to consider the organization's perspective, and tied closely with that is the second idea, which is the leadership perspective. So now that we have the organization's perspective, can we clearly articulate that across all levels of the organization? Now, how is that aligned or misaligned with the leadership's perspective? And leadership's kind of a loaded word. When I say leadership in that context, let's just call it the top senior leaders of the organization. So their perspective is valid as well. But I think we all know that when we get into complex change and transformations, and I've certainly seen it, you start to get performance management that is the lever that's pulled to get the leaders to do this change. And that actually might go against the organization's perspective. I think a friend of mine once said, given the right incentives, any corporate leader will gladly take the company down to get their incentive. So those things can very easily become misaligned, but they're 2 perspectives that we need to consider, along with the third one, which is the people perspective. Now, this is everyone from managers, developers, testers, business people, whoever, people who are doing the work day to day. That's another perspective we need to consider. And when we look at those 3 different perspectives, the organization, the leaders, and the people doing the work, it's important for us to have meaningful conversations around where we're aligned and where we're misaligned. If we have imbalance, if there's too much of the organization's perspective being pushed, we can fall into that urgency trap and coercion. If there's too much of the people perspective being pushed, then we might forget the reasons why this is important to the company in the first place. And it's a delicate balance that we need to achieve. If you want to see some interesting ways for creating that dialogue, our theme last month was meaningful dialogue. So you can check out that video here for some ideas about how to do a technique called perspective mapping and basically try to align those perspectives. Tied very closely to those 3 ideas is the 4th idea, which is storytelling. And these certainly aren't in any order or steps that you need to do to make this work. Storytelling works because everybody loves stories. I mean, a lot of the times in organizations, I've seen this a lot. If you can go on LinkedIn right now and you'll probably find 100 articles about why every company is stupid and they do everything wrong. But I would argue that's not the case. I think lots of companies are doing a lot better than they give themselves credit for. Storytelling is a very powerful technique that can really simplify a lot of the change mumbo jumbo that seems to overwhelm people that really nobody in the world cares about other than change agents. So think about it this way. We need to honor the past. We need to look back and say, you know what, we used to work this way. It was awesome. Here's all the great things we did. Second thing is to accept the foreign element. So this is the trigger that causes the change. That is, then one day this happened. That could be a change in market conditions. That could be, obviously, COVID was a massive foreign element for every company on the planet. But there's a foreign element and there's a trigger that we need to accept. The third part of good storytelling becomes, now what are we going to do about it? So when we kind of simplify and we use those stories to explore those 3 different perspectives, we're more likely to start nudging change forward because we're making it real and we're using the value of conversations to be able to figure out how to move forward, not a step-by-step process and not this fake urgency by saying, well, you have to because, which doesn't seem to work. The 5th idea is congruence, and congruence is, you could basically simplify this to say, we do what we say what we do. It's a lot more complex than that, and it is rooted in Virginia Satir's work, and it's basically we value self, which is us and what we need and what our needs and desires are, with the other, so what's important for others, within a certain context. When we consider all three of those, we have congruence. When it comes to switching your stance from urgency towards cause and purpose, congruence is when we look at those three different perspectives, the organization's perspective, the leader's perspective, and the people perspective, and we're congruent in our response to how we see this change and how we want to move it forward. So an example would be there are plenty of enterprise organizations that have been transforming forever. You could say agile transformations started becoming popular in the late 2000s. There were some handful of companies doing it earlier than that as well, but really when it started becoming popular and a thing. So a lot of enterprise organizations have been transforming forever, and they always talk about transformation, mindset, cultures, values. Here's the 10 steps to follow, here's the approved methods you're allowed to use, and here's how you're measured against all of these different types of things. That's in congruence. Somehow the process improvement phrase has been given, kind of a kicking around the parking lot by Agile people, that we need to change mindsets and culture. We can't just use Agile to improve processes. The whole point of congruence is, if that's what your objective is, if you're an enterprise and you just want to improve your supply chain, or you want to improve your concept to cash, or you want to reduce your cycle time from X to Y, call it a process improvement project. Don't call it a transformation. That's the whole point of congruence. People can see right through that corporate BS nowadays. I think COVID has shown people that they can work from anywhere with anyone at any time. So people might not feel as stuck having to stay in an organization as they used to. So if we're being congruent and we're saying, hey, we want to improve these processes, awesome, do a process improvement program. It's not what I would pick, but be congruent about it. The sixth idea is passion. So that is about unlocking passion with the people who I call the movers. You can call them innovators, you can call them early adopters. These are basically the people who, their personal belief aligns with the change, and they're the people that you just let them run amok. Let their passion help evolve and help the change to emerge, because they're the ones that are going to generate social proof for everybody else in the organization. And without that passion, you end up with a change that's just sterile. And when we come at it from a place of urgency for change, we tend to want to control those people. Yes, I'm glad you're bought into the change. Here's the 5 things you're supposed to do. Here's the 3 things that you're not allowed to do. And that just defeats the purpose of that passion with some of these change agents. So the interesting thing with dynamics, people dynamics in transformations I've seen, is the people that have that deep passion early on in agile transformation get stifled very quickly when the organization feels it needs to control things. And then I find that those early adopters, or the movers as I call them, tend to move on to a new organization, and those are exactly the people that you need if you are truly wanting to do deep transformation and really try to switch more to a values, principles, mindset type of culture in your organization. All right, so the last one is the most boring one. Maybe I should have done that one earlier, but it's reinforcing. And it's not reinforcing in the sense of that templated method that has this as the final step. It's more of a feedback loop. It's more tied to congruence based on the insights that you've gathered from exploring all of those different perspectives. It's about, hey, why are we doing this change again? That's a reinforcing element, because that provokes a conversation that goes back to the intent of the change from the organization's perspective. It's very easy to get off the rails when we think about change as a set of linear steps. And there's the sunk cost fallacy that, oh, we've already spent this much defining the change, we've already spent this much doing the change, we're going to keep going down that path without questioning why we really wanted to do this in the first place. So the reinforcing isn't really about what you would call reinforcing in a traditional sense. It's more, what evidence do you see that is leading you to believe we're headed towards what our original intention was? I remember having that template inflicted on me once in an organization, and my score was 0 for the reinforcement part. And I remember getting yelled at by my manager. Well, you're the change agent. You can't be 0. You have to change that to a 5. And so that got my spidey sense thinking, okay, there must be a score mechanism in performance management somewhere that people are being coerced into a certain score. But if that was the case, hard to say. That's what it felt like when I was having this conversation. And I said, okay, well, I'm having a hard time finding evidence that the leaders here are supporting it. Here's the examples. Do you have any examples that show that there's something that's encouraging people or giving us good feedback or telling us that this is the right direction? Does any of that stuff exist? And silence, followed by, well, you've got to get that score up to a 5. So I don't mean reinforcing in the coercion sense or reaffirming that leaders are patting people on the head and saying, yes, you're doing a good job. It's a feedback loop. It's a place to gather more insights so we can question the change. We can see what we've done so far. It could very easily be called a retrospective, but that helps us keep in alignment from those multiple perspectives so we're heading towards our cause and purpose. All right, so to wrap up, this has been 7 ideas for flipping your thinking away from creating urgency for change and towards cause and purpose. That's one of the 5 universals of change. Each month we're doing a different theme. Last month we did meaningful dialogue. Again, you can find that video here. And the month before that, we did valuing the response to change over resistance. And you can find that at the link here. And all the links are down below in the description. So throughout the month of December, we're going to be highlighting companies that are creating a social impact or doing greater good in the world, because I think what COVID taught us is, and I've seen lots of change agents go through this over the last 18 months or so, they've kind of questioned, you know what, maybe I could use my talents for something that has a little bit more meaning than making gigantic company A a few extra bucks by doing an agile transformation with them. And the intent of that is not to say that work is not valuable. The intent is this gigantic global disruption of COVID has really given people an opportunity to think about what their purpose is and companies that they feel much more aligned to, and they might even feel more safe to make those changes. So throughout December, this is what our theme will be about. We're going to be highlighting those companies. We're going to be doing lots of articles and posts and polls on LinkedIn to hopefully help you figure out how you can help organizations switch their stance away from this old, traditional, instill urgency on people, try on a new set of lenses, and look at how we can help align people around a common cause or purpose. Remember to hit the like and subscribe button. I'm Jason Little, the author of Lean Change Management and Change Agility. Drop a comment below if you've got an example of a company that has a strong sense of purpose or does something to make the world a better place. Have a great and wonderful holiday, and we'll see you on the next one.